Magandang umaga, Julia. Maraming salamat. Good morning, dear friends, and good morning, Elsie Francis and Brads. I am glad to speak in the same event today with our Brads who are among the very best in their fields of passion, beginning with our faculty advisor, Brad Bobby Figueroa. Brad Senator Cheese is definitely one of the best senators of our time. He is always one of the best and top performers in the Senate. Of course, Prof. Temi Rivera is one of the most respected figures in the academy on the topic of democracy. And of course, Brad Mayor Manny Maliksi is among the very best local chief executives in the country. And Congressman Bong Bilaro is truly one of the best advocates of education in the country. And Brad Bangsamoro, Parliament Deputy Speaker, Zia Adjong is one of the best leaders of Muslim Mindanao. Friends and Brads, I am sure you will be treated to 2 hours of great works and great insights today on the topics on democracy, governance, and pandemic handling. On my part, I am glad that one of our topics is governance, because that's where I can share with you my experience on governance and development works, where I have spent a great part of my life in the last 10 years. Because of my experience in the governance and development work, I have come to believe that many of the big problems that we have in the government in the country can actually be addressed if we practice the principles of good governance. The principles of integrity, meritocracy, stakeholders consultation, stakeholders empowerment, transparency, accountability, and of course, sustainability. In a few minutes, I will be sharing with you some of my actual experiences in this field of governance and development work. But for now, let me just point out perhaps some of the challenges and problems na hinaharap ng ating bansa ngayon. The poverty situation in our country has actually worsened or continues to worsen, despite the fact that some reports would tend to show that the figures are improving. If you would base on the Bayanihan Acts 1, 2, and 3 passed by the government, they have actually identified a total of 18 million Filipinos, 18 million families. Times 5, that's roughly 90 million Filipinos who belong to the low-income classes in the country. So if 90 million Filipinos belong to the low-income classes in our society, that's 80% of our population. So out of 110 million Filipinos, 90 million Filipinos belong to low-income classes. Ang ibig sabihin, only 20 million Filipinos in the country are above these low-income levels. So that's one aspect I think that we should really seriously look at. And it was also reported a few weeks ago in our newspapers that according to this European-based research think tank, that almost 70% of the Filipinos today nabubuhay dahil sa utang. 70% of the Filipinos today nabubuhay sa utang. At marami sa kanila lubog at baon sa utang. So that's again a picture of the poverty situation in our country. In the area of education, sa elementary at sa high school, our students have performed very poorly, according to PISA, which is an international index of our level of education. We are last among those countries tested, last in reading comprehension, in the test on science and technology. Again, this is very alarming, the level of the literacy of our youth, especially sa primary and secondary level. In the handling of the pandemic, as was reported yesterday, Philippines also ranked last 53rd of the 53 countries sa listahan ng Bloomberg COVID Index. Ibig sabihin, 53rd, we are last doon sa the way we handle the pandemic crisis in our country, according to Bloomberg index. No? And big time corruption has become part of our pandemic response. No? The government activities and projects, big time corruption has become a part of that thing. No? And our country's national debt has really increased tremendously. No? Almost nag-double siya from 2016. In 2016, ang national debt natin only stood at 6.4 trillion. It was reported yesterday that our national debt has almost doubled. No? It now stands at 11.73 trillion. In less than 6 years, no, almost nag-double ang utang ng ating bansa, yung conglomerate na utang. No? And apart from that, China's influence and control or influence in the Philippines is also increasing. No? Palakas ng palakas ang influensya ng China sa ating eleksyon at sa ating gobyerno. And this is also a very alarming situation in our country. But these are only some of the problems and challenges that we face today as a country and as a people. I am sure in the presentations of our distinguished speakers today, the Brads, some answers to these problems will be tackled. No? But for now, I would like to share with you what we do and my experience as a governance and development leader, especially dito sa ISA. ISA is a public governance institute founded by former Finance Secretary Jesus Stanislao, former Central Bank Governor and Ambassador Jose Quisha, and a number of other cabinet secretaries and mayors and CEOs of private corporations. No? More than 20 years ago. ISA as a public institute, what it does really is it installs and it implements good governance and development programs in various LGUs and NGAs, national government agencies in the country, like the AFP, Department of Trade and Industry, the Board of Investments, Civil Service Commission, and many other NGAs. No? And so I'd like to share with you at least two actual stories, when I became president and CEO of ISA. No? In 2011, the Philippine Heart Center, it used to be na kung kailangan mo magpa-opera dahil may problema ka sa puso at taga-probinsya ka, you need to travel to Manila para magpa-opera ka. No? So, gagastos ka ng pamasahe, pero pagdating mo sa Metro Manila, mahaba ang pila sa Philippine Heart Center. So, sometimes you will have to wait for days, weeks, and sometimes months bago ka maoperahan sa Philippine Heart Center. Gagastos ka sa stay mo, allowances and everything. No? In the meantime, nagsasuffer ka. No? In 2011, there were only 3 regions in the country na may capacity to operahan ka sa heart problems mo doon sa region mo, doon sa probinsya mo. Nag-enroll sila itong Philippine Heart Center sa ISA. No? And ang vision nila is they wanted to bring the capability of the Philippine Heart Center to the regions and to the provinces. Para yung may sakit sa puso sa probinsya, hindi na pupunta ng Metro Manila at doon sila operahan sa Metro Manila. Instead, doon na lang sila sa probinsya nila, sa region nila, at doon sila operahan. No? And that's what we did. We came up with a strategy on how to do that. You know, after 7 years, I'm happy to tell you that today, in almost all regions in the country, yung capability and capacity of the Philippine Heart Center in operating a person with a heart ailment, a heart problem, na kaya lang gawin ng Philippine Heart Center, pwede nang gawin doon sa hospitals na tinulungan at dinevelop ng Philippine Heart Center. No? And if you ask me, this is one of the most fantastic examples of what yung good governance and development programs na can do. Another story I would like to share with you. No? Also in 2011, there is such an agency as National Electrification Administration, NEA. This NEA was created in the 1960s. No? Ang mandate ng NEA is to bring electricity in every city, in every rural areas in the country. Okay, in 2011, when we made an assessment, marami pang CTUs, in fact, more than 50% of the CTUs in the country, wala pa ring electricity. So, ang ginawa namin, okay, ano yung vision mo? So, sabi nila, they were able to identify 35,000 CTUs all over the country. Wala pang electricity. And so what we did, sige, ang goal natin was to bring electricity, install electricity in these 35,000 CTUs in a period of 5 years. So from 2011, in-implement naman siya ng 5 years. Persistent, implementation, monitoring, realigning of budget. No? And, by 2016, I'm happy to tell you that yung 35,000 CTUs na yun, na walang electricity in 2011, had been fully installed with electricity. And atong benefit doon, almost 15 million Filipinos in the rural far-flung areas. So this is just one example of how governance and development work can deliver. No? So that's why I believe that the principles of good governance, if we just practice it in every government agency, can address most of the big problems that we see in the government today. So what we do in ISA is actually help agency per agency, LGU per LGU, help them achieve their vision and their development goals for their agency or for their institution. And that's what we do in ISA. No? So as president of ISA, when I became president in 2015, I introduced this program, which is called Dream Philippines Program. So we dream of a Philippines where no one is left behind, where there is enough for everyone, where no Filipino is left behind the street to suffer in poverty, where every child has a real hope for a better future, where every Filipino family is not left behind in poverty. So, but in very specific terms, of course, meron siya mga programs, no? And I believe that we as a people, we Filipinos, we are not second class. Kung kinaya ng mga Singaporeans, ng mga Japanese, ng South Koreans, kaya na ng Filipino. If we just put our heart into it and our dedication into it, and kaya din ng Filipino. No, 60 years ago, Singapore, South Korea, and China, they were poor and backward countries. Philippines was better than Singapore, South Korea, and China 60 years ago. But look at where they are now and look where we are. But I always believe, kaya din ng Pilipino, kaya din ng Pilipinas, if we just really put our heart into it and our minds into it. So, dear friends, Brads, maraming salamat for this opportunity. I hope we keep on pushing ourselves to the limits and challenging ourselves and bring the Filipino, our country, to a higher level of respect and development. Maraming salamat, Brads, no? And friends.